Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. So this video is about some of the dissimilarities between British and American English. I'm getting over a cold, by the way. So these ones just occurred to me, and they're in no particular order. I'm a verba main, so vocabulary is something I find enthralling. Now, supposing one's listening to somebody else, and the other person's obviously doing most of the talking. A British person, might say I see, simply to show that they're listening. Whereas it seems to me that Americans often say right, which means they're not necessarily agreeing, they're just indicating that they are still concentrating. Right, like that. Because for us, if we say right, that means I agree. I mean, obviously apart from meaning the direction on the right-hand side, or correct in other situations. We often say, certainly in Southeast England, people often say all right to mean how are you. But in their accent in Southeastern England, they often say all right. I'm Irish. I don't have that accent. I don't have an Irish accent either. But that's the Cockney accent, the working class London accent, where it comes out like a W instead of a double L, all right, like that. And so walking down the street, greeting a perfect stranger, someone from that part of the United Kingdom might say, all right, mate. Mate is any man or boy. Likewise, I say it in Australia. It's not like an animal mates with another animal. I suppose it comes from shipmate, things like that, or teammate. Whereas I noticed in the United States, people sometimes said lovely day, which was an almost salutation. They weren't bothering to stop and say, good afternoon, how are you? Again, it was to a complete stranger in public. Or I noticed people from the United States talking about hanging out, spending time with people, even though they weren't socializing as such. Whereas in Ireland, Great Britain, we don't say that one very much. A hangout might be a place as well, where a certain person is known to frequent. Or I know in the United States, people always talk about their home, almost never their house. So in Ireland and Great Britain, it's house. Obviously, we have flats if you live in a block of them, as in a multi-story building, and you only have one floor, one part of one floor. Of course, we can say apartment, and everybody understands that. Occasionally it's used, but more commonly a flat. Candy, that's another one. We'd say sweets. I'm not sure if candy includes chocolate or not. The only thing time we say candy is talking about candy cane. This is another one. Now, a bus goes around the city, stops in many places, or goes from one village to another in a countryside area, and has a not very long route. Goes for an hour or something, max. Whereas if it's going a long distance, like Dublin to Belfast, that's a coach. Going from one city to the next. And in the United States, they don't distinguish it. It's always a bus. Remember on a coach in the United Kingdom years ago, my colleague was on the mobile phone saying, right, the bus driver says we'll be in there in half an hour. And the bus driver said, coach driver. He corrected her. Now, we wouldn't often bother to distinguish. But for this man, it wasn't splitting hairs. It really made a difference. So that's that. Oh God, something else occurred to me, but it's now slipped my mind. Vacation. Obviously going away, to vacate where you live, almost like evacuate. That's what people do in the United States. Whereas in Ireland, Great Britain, we go on holiday, or in Ireland particularly saying on holidays. There's obviously a public holiday, things like Christmas Day, New Year's Day. 26th of December, that's Boxing Day in Great Britain, but St. Stephen's Day in Ireland. I know in the United States, public holiday means the same. We never say the holidays to mean Christmas and New Year. Quarter of, as in 2:45, quarter of 3. But in the British Isles, it's a quarter to 3. What else is there? Ice water in the United States. I suppose we'd say water with ice. Another thing is I noticed that in the United States, people often fill the glass with ice cubes and then pour some liquid in. Whereas we wouldn't do quite so much of that. One of my German colleagues said in the United States, she's kept after you ask for only one cube, please. Don't overdo it. Per person's weight is always pounds in the United States. In Ireland, Great Britain, we're talking about kilos these days. We tend not to say stone anymore. Yards, we almost never use yard as a measurement of distance. We don't say gaining yardage, or I say getting mileage out of something. Yeah, we still do use miles for long distances. Well, in Great Britain they do. In Ireland we use kilometres. Republic of Ireland we use kilometres, I should say. Miles an hour, the speed limit on the road. Now, backyard. In Ireland and Great Britain, people don't say that one. Always say back garden or front garden, things like that. Whereas I know it's backyard or indeed front yard in the United States. I knew a guy, well, where was he from? I think New Hampshire, saying schwag, but this is almost 20 years ago. I think it means dreadful. Is that a schwag college? I'd never heard that one before. Or, this is a distinctly Britannic word, gutted. Perhaps it's more closely associated with London, which means bitterly disappointed. Okay? Like a fish is gutted. If you've just been eviscerated, everything been removed. Well, that's bad news. This is another one which could cause great misunderstanding. I heard that heave is a slang word meaning to vomit in the United States. Well, for us, it's to pull on very strongly, like, tug of war or something. And I suppose maybe when you're retching, it's a bit like pulling very strongly. Or if a place is very crowded, like you say, the room is heaving, something like that. It's almost listing from side to side like that. Heave ho, as in these sailor songs about pulling very strongly. Ho for us is what Santa Claus says. It's not as in what a gangster rapper would say. There's an activity for us called debating. I know in the United States it's debate. Or there's rowing for us. I know it's crew in the United States. We might say a rowing boat rather than a rowboat. Reverend, as in the title of a priest or other religious leader. And, let me see. And then we're meant to call him the Reverend, whoever. Yeah, it should always be the Reverend. Whereas I think in the United States it's simply Reverend, they don't put the in front. Or not saying parson very much. I think in the United States they do say that. Obviously in the Roman Catholic Church we say priest for father, we say father for priest, and then follow it with the surname, not the Christian name usually. Though more modern and approachable ones, we follow their Christian name. For example, if the priest is Father Marcus Walker, well, it'd be Father Walker rather than Father Marcus. We say brackets rather than parentheses. Say, well, this is an example of where American English is closer to French in sticking with parentheses. Monday through Thursday in North America, for us, would be Monday to Thursday. Likewise, February through July, we'd say February to July. We don't have Labor Day, so we don't use that one as a date. I remember a newscast in the United States saying, there was good news Friday, well, we'd say on Friday, whenever it was. I remember watching The Patriot years ago, and a young man asks this older deaf man, may I write Anne, meaning write to Anne, write letters to her. Because for us, if you're asking him, may I write Anne, you're asking permission to write the word Anne, rather than to write letters that you're going to send to her. So obviously we say autumn and autumnal occasionally. We never say fall for the season of the year, but apparently that was used in British English in the 19th century, but it simply fell out of use back then. So here the United States is stuck to the original way of saying things, retained words such as sentinel and oftentimes, which are archaic in the British Isles. Faucet, whereas we'd say tap. I wonder if Fawcett is after the inventor, because that is a surname. Of course, we say surname rather than last name. Surname we could occasionally say family name. I'm not sure if we have any other ways to say surname. The bathroom. For us, the bathroom really does have a bath. So don't say that unless there is actually a bath in it, as well as possibly another facility. We never say restroom or even washroom. People say lavatory, it would be very polite, or loo, the slightly slang, saying that T word in the United States, or in the United Kingdom. Most people say that, but if you're very posh, you would turn your nose up at that one, saying, oh my goodness, that's a proletarian word. I can't possibly say that. A very ladylike American said to me she was going to visit the ladies. A good way of putting it. People wouldn't directly allude to what they need to do and often say, I need to wash my hands. Where might I wash my hands? Even they want to do something more than that. I remember giving an order for some food in the United States, and the young woman was saying, you all set? Obviously, she meant, is that everything? That's what we were saying. Because for me, you all set, are you ready? I suppose we were ready in that sense, in the context of having ordered everything we wished. Well, I mentioned mate earlier. I've occasionally heard women being referred to as mate. I think, no, that's for males only. Then I've heard the feminine version of it, matess, but that's highly unusual. Buddy in the United States to mean a friend is the equivalent. I mean, if you meet someone, don't know this person, might still call him buddy. Chap in the British Isles, but that's quite a posh word and perhaps anachronistic. Even chapess to mean a woman, but that one I think is very old-fashioned and perhaps simply for comedic effect. Pub, that's public house in Ireland and Great Britain, as in a place that serves beer, other alcoholic beverages. We don't use the word beverage very much, actually. Snacks, occasionally proper meals. There might even be rooms upstairs if you have a really good evening in the bar. I know in the United States there's always bar. For us, we have bars, hotel bars, or in the airport there'll be a bar, things like that. A pub occasionally might actually have the name something bar. Whereas I know in the United States there's virtually always bar. If it was an Irish place, it might just call itself a pub. Obviously, beer being sold in pints or indeed half pints. Don't know what the measurements are in the United States. I know in the United States and Canada people work out when they're going to take exercise. I suppose we should just say I'm going to the gym or I'm going to take exercise. I'm exercising, something like that. Sweatpants, we would say tracksuit bottoms. And the whole thing is a tracksuit. And there was a very shiny material one, we'd often call that shell suit. That's very much associated with the proletariat. Nothing wrong with that. And young women used to wear them all the time. They were labelled kappa slappers in the 90s, which was opprobrious. A slapper, well, it's a pejorative term for a woman suggesting she's highly promiscuous. Not that I think there's anything amiss with being promiscuous. So those are just a few of my reflections. Some things which are completely random, something which occurred to me and I found intriguing was to talk about some of the distinctions between the two codes on the opposite sides of the Atlantic. If you like this channel, please donate because I rely on donations to keep it alive. You can find my PayPal account, georgecallahan1979@gmail.com. It's all small letters. Only one N in Callahan for that address.